Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I am mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too. Yes, it's him again. My God, just rolling these out, right? Anyway, continuing our look into aspects of Hinduism or the Indian tradition, which certainly includes Jainism, Buddhism, and many Islamic traditions. But in general, I like to talk about the Hindu tradition because it's usually the one that we connect more easily to yoga, and the other ones are, I don't want to say offshoots of it, but peripheral to the same quest for enlightenment, the experience of that insight. And it's hard to really know what it is because, in a certain way, it's about experiencing the aspect of mind that I could call silent. As one teacher says, truth is most easily expressed in silence and best understood in silence. So that makes it difficult because there was the story of the disciple that goes to the teacher and says, "Tell me, O Guru, what is the truth?" Just like when Jesus was asked, "What is the truth?" by Pontius Pilate, he stood silent, mute. And the disciple said, "Oh Guruji, I know that your divine wisdom is unbelievable, but that is way too deep for me. I cannot understand. Can't you tell me in a positive way? Can you express it in any way?" And the Guru says, "Neti, neti. It's not this and it's not that. That means negate everything that comes into your mind. And if you could negate everything, whatever you're left with, that's it." The disciple says, "Oh, peacock of the age, I know that your wisdom surpasses anything on the earth plane, but I'm too dense, I cannot get it if you express it negatively. Can you express it positively?" Tat twamasi, thou art that. Yeah, you are what we're talking about. Can't get it. So this is where the transmission now starts devolving, since people can't get it from those little tips that take you deep. So that's why in the yoga world, although we almost see the Ashtanga path of Patanjali as a hierarchical unfolding that logically, rationally moves from studying ethics, yama and niyama, things that you abstain from and things that sustain you in the practice. And then you add the asana practice, and then you add the breath practice, then you add the guided deep relaxation practices, and then you add the successive meditative experiences which teach you to concentrate your mind, hold your mind in concentration, and then kind of fuse your mind so that the person who's doing the meditating, the object that you're meditating on, and the meditation itself becomes one thing that's called samyama, also sometimes called samadhi. And we can't really talk about it because it's a silent state. Like they say, what happens when you take the jug of water and you fill it up? As long as it's filling, you hear the glug, 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 glug. Watch what happens when we go into the silence there. Well, they say, no, it's like a bee. It's buzzing around until it starts sipping the honey. Or like it's butter sizzling in the pan. As soon as all the fat goes out, you don't hear the sizzling anymore. So that's what happens. The teacher tries to give you the tip. It's in silence. It's in where the mind stops thinking, chitta vritti, right? The cessation of the fluctuations of the mind stuff. But you can't get that. So then the teacher says, well, meditate. Oh, it's so hard for me to sit still. I get the heebie-jeebies. My body's so difficult. I'm restless. Okay, then concentrate. Focus your mind on something. Well, I get distracted so easily. There's sounds in the environment, and I'm thinking about what's going to happen after the meditation. Okay, in that case, relax yourself. It's so hard to relax. My nervous system is like pumped up all the time. I drink caffeine and sugar cola, so my body's like antsy and stuff like that. Okay, learn to breathe then. Well, it's hard for me. Look, I have a deviated septum, and I had asthma when I was a kid, and I live in a polluted environment. Okay, then why don't you stretch your body, get rid of your tensions? Yeah, I know, but I have scoliosis, and I hurt my back, so my doctor said I shouldn't do any exercises that you. Okay, well, in that case, now we'll just have to inculcate morality. Don't do this and try to do this. So it completely devolves from your ability to experience directly in the silent mind the truth to where now people are just telling you the moral virtues, how you should act. And again, then we're back in the wasteland, people telling you what to do, how to do it. And then now you're a conditioned being, no longer experiencing it directly, the experience of spirit directly in your life. And you get a sense of spiritual inferiority. Now, one of the things is I like to put the context of what we're doing not as a pitting of the East against the West, but you understand there's two fundamentally different cultural mindsets. And in general, we can say the East is an introspective mindset or an introverted mindset, and the West is a kind of extroverted mindset, or things where in the material plane, out in the world, seems to be more real than some kind of subjective, introverted state of self-reflection. And it's very, very hard for a Western person who's been conditioned in the Christian mindset. It doesn't matter if you actually are a Christian or believe Christian, but the Christian mindset has created the idea that the answers are outside ourselves. Grace is outside ourselves. God is outside ourselves. And you cannot be a good Christian and redeem yourself in the way that the Eastern model says, the power of the introverted mind to self-liberate. The Buddha didn't claim to be a God, just to be an awakened one. You couldn't be a good Buddhist and have faith in God. It just doesn't work. So we've tried to make a kind of crossover between these mutually depreciative systems. Each one kind of disses the other one. And of course, the answer is somewhere in between. You have to find some kind of inner life, and yet at the same time, we're social beings. We have to act in the world. The answer will always be in an action. And just like fire has the power to burn and give off light, so ultimate being is both that which is non-moving, silent, and beyond form, and yet at the same time, it activates itself. It manifests, it emanates, it produces form, and through form, we see what we're capable of. So that's an interesting thing to keep in juxtaposition. Now, I'm also highlighting different teachers this week, and I wanted to talk about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, not only because the Beatles, who I love, went to India at one time, and not only because he had that cosmic giggle, no, not only just that, but one of the things that Maharishi did was he started the idea that if we can get like 1% of the planet meditating, that would be enough to kind of create a quantum shift. And so that means you want to look at life both as a whole and in part. And the way you do that is through meditation, the science of creative intelligence. They had some really wonderful studies that showed the benefits of meditating just twice a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, to get to the subtlest level of thought, which is the source of thought itself. And there are so many benefits to do it. Try it and you'll find out. So when you do that, then you get a calm in your nervous system, and then your action in the world ceases to be a kind of bondage, right? Ceases to focus only on life as decay, right? So your action then is permeated by a certain kind of peace. And remember, the mind at peace finds ways of affecting its environment. We become more capable of power, directed power on the behalf of others, intelligence of enjoying life, functioning in a way where your own nature is clear to you. And then when you realize, in terms of the ethics, that your thoughts can pollute your life or can purify your life, you align yourself with the karmic influences of the positive thinking, which is why I'm always talking about affirmations at the end of the sentence, relationship between what you believe and how thought works as a seed that produces fruit after its kind. So this means yoga is the pursuit of the truth, the root truth. And if you water the root, the fruits and the flowers are definitely going to come. So although this is present in everyone in seed form, it doesn't mean that it manifests into fruit form. You got to put in your time. And it's an accrual system. So over time, more things will develop. Now, I like to poke holes sometimes in the false science aspect of yoga or anything. Like, for instance, how many times have you heard me say, there are no snakes at the base of the spine, which is how they metaphorically talk about the kundalini, a snake coil 3.5 times at the base of the spine, and you have to release its coiled energy, unblock its energy, so the spiritual gasoline of the kundalini, the dormant potential of your nervous system, rises up the spine and, does the Macarena in your head. It's a metaphor. How do we know? Well, we've dissected people, and there aren't snakes at the base of the spine. So you see, it moves from practical experience, things you can do in reality, experiment with yourself and find that out through direct experience, into metaphor, poetry, suggestion, imagination. I always call it the romance with your imagination. So here's an example of a romance with imagination. If you walked into your home, and if, let's say, the door had a foyer, right, where you had to walk through a hall to get into the next room, if you put busts on either side of the hall as you walked in, who would be the spiritual mentors? Who would be the men and women that make you most proud to be a human being, whose life is psychically operative for you, right? Who would you have on one side? Who would you have on the other side? For me, I might have Mr. Iyengar as a male representative, or Joseph Campbell as a male representative. I might have Simone de Beauvoir, okay, as a female representative, or Joan of Arc, or whoever might be a woman who represents the way she showed up in history and how that really appeals to me. So that's how you understand your roots, right? The spiritual forebearers, the ancestors of your spirituality. So, but what I like to say is, although we have the idea of enlightenment, like we're striving for a certain state of consciousness that we don't actually experience now, but we potentially have in embryonic form, I call it enlightenment as the North Star, the pole star. As you know, when you're north of the equator, the North Star is a seemingly fixed object in the night sky. And millions of navigators through history can attest to its practical and functional effectiveness as using it as a point from which you can triangulate. I'm here, it's there, it doesn't move, and I want to go there. So that helps me navigate. So we know there's a certain practical, functional effectiveness to it. But it isn't absolute north, true north, because below the equator, in the southern hemisphere, you can't see Polaris at all. But forget that aspect of the critique of it. The truth is, for those north of the equator, it's a fixed point that's practical that we can use to navigate to get closer to where we think this idea of enlightenment really exists. And for me, that's the yogic path, how it's been laid out. But remember, there's a difference between dogma and being lost in a fundamentalist kind of certitude. Mentors don't give you dogma, but they help you move forward into direct experience in the silent mind. And then you realize, you've heard me say, happiness isn't something you get from the world. Happiness is something you bring to the world. And it just doesn't come from like acting per se. It comes from the expression of your true being. So this is where, no matter how much the stories may say you have to face trials on the road, right? As Joseph Campbell says, it's not the agony of the quest, it's the rapture of the revelation. It's worth going through these things, almost like we say parenting, like, kids can be crazy, in your life. You want to strangle them sometimes, but is it worth it? High percentage of parents would say, absolutely, it's worth it. So once you understand that spirituality is the bouquet of natural life, not a supernatural grace added unto it, you immerse yourself in your natural life. And part of your natural life is your own self-discovery. Joseph Campbell made this wonderful comment for me that really helped. He said it's the difference between the Guru's path and the Grail Knights. And what I think he meant by that is, in the Guru's path, you're following a tried and true path. They're telling you what it's all about. They've mastered the path, or they've been through it, and now they're showing you. But that's their path, and they always know where you are, and you're not where they are. So it's this path of aspiration or striving or moving ahead towards what you currently think is unknown, but it's somebody else guiding you, and it's somebody else's revealed truth. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just giving you the emphasis. That's the old model. The Grail Knight truth, which is something from, who knows, the 11th, 1200s in the Western tradition, has to do with the idea they went and searched for the Grail, supposedly the cup that caught Christ's blood that had healing virtues. And if you look into that symbol, it's not Christian, it's pagan. But nonetheless, the idea was that if you could find your way to the Grail, if the purity of your heart could bring you in contact with the Grail, then you would have your own divine revelation outside of the church as the sole purveyor of truth. And whether or not the church disagreed with this or not, it's irrelevant. The idea is that they went in search for the Grail, and then there was a key point in one of the teachings that said they deemed it was a disgrace to go into the forest as a group, So each one went where there was no way or path. And that's the beginning of the Western individualism, that it's up to each one of us to have a direct experience the grace outside of an organized tradition. Doesn't mean that you can't still be experiencing community, right? The church is the body of Christ, and be with other people. It doesn't say that. But you do understand that there is a way which in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, your individuality is defined as how you're also connected to the community. So that's beautiful in one way because it shows you the interdependence and interconnectivity, but also you can get lost and you can be more like a clone, just following along and not really finding the direct revelation for you. All right, so with that being said, the story I'd like to share with you today is one of my favorites. It's the snake's lesson. You know, the first principle in yoga is ahimsa, non-violence. And maybe another time when I'll discuss the scriptures, it's interesting to know that the Bhagavad Gita, the song Celestial, is all about a clan war. And for a discipline like yoga, which says non-violence, hurt no living thing, that's the main directive. And yet the revelation of God to the warrior here is why he has to kill people in this battle. Incredible paradox. Nonetheless, with that in the background, once there was a village and it was being stressed, it was being challenged by the fact that there was a huge snake that was killing small animals, biting people along the way, and making life miserable for everybody in the village. And they didn't know what to do. They were afraid to go out on the paths. And so they said, finally, there's only one thing to do. We have to call the local yogi, because yogis have no fear, and also snakes no heart. So once they're in the presence of a yogi, they'll be completely different. So they called the local yogi, and he said, I'll take care of it. And the yogi went out into the bush and chanted his mantra, Om, Om, Om. And the snake slithers out. And the yogi says, what's all this nonsense I hear about you? You're going around biting people, making life miserable for them. Has nobody initiated you into yoga? And the snake says, no, Swamiji, nobody. He says, let me teach you the mantra. I want you to chant this mantra. It's going to chill, make you chill, very mellow. You'll experience Shanti, the peace of yoga. Everything will be fine. I'll come back and check on you in a little bit. So he initiates the snake into the yogic mantra, and the snake is in bliss. Has never experienced such deep revelation in his life. And have you ever seen the way the cobra moves along in rhythm to the way the guy plays on the flute, right? So the snake is in the rhythm. He's totally got his dopamine going. He's totally with the flow of the universe. And then he's just lying there sitting like in a samadhi state. And after a long time or a short time, whatever time it takes in these stories, the most bold children, they know that the snake is not doing anything. He seems to be harmless now. So they take a stick and they poke it. And normally the snake would just, but no. The snake is now totally cool. So they poke it a little bit more. The snake is thinking to himself, I'm non-violent. I'm just going to be here, just going to chill. Now the boldest of the boys, they grab the snake, they whip it, and they push and pound it this way, that way, this way, that way, and they leave it as a bloody stump there. Now the Swami comes back, goes to the forest once again. He chants his mantra, Om, Om, Om. And the snake slithers out and comes out. He's all bandaged, got a crutch, and he has no arms. He has a crutch, and the Swami says, oh my God, you look like shit. What happened to you? This is not what happens when you chant the mantra. What's going on? He says, well, you chanted the mantra, and I immediately started practicing, and I felt fantastic, and I was getting these peace rushes, and I just didn't want to harm anybody, and I was just lying there content in my santosha. And then when the boys in the village, they came by and they saw I was not doing anything, they poked me this way, they poked me that way, and when I didn't move and didn't respond, they grabbed me by the tail, they swung me around their head like this, and that way, this way, that way, this way, and they left me as the bloody pulp that you see me now. And the Swami looks at me and says, you are a nincompoop. I told you not to bite, but I didn't tell you not to hiss. Sometimes you got to keep a scary face in the world, right? Draw some good boundaries if you need to. See you tomorrow.